Today on This Week in Startups, we're joined by Kelly Perdew, the CEO of RotoHog, and of course, the winner of The Apprentice Season 2, which was the best season. Everybody knows that. We'll tell you how to blow out your fantasy sports team, and that starts just in 2 days. And we'll enjoy a cool, delicious glass of Gatorade. All that and more on This Week in Startups, starting now.
Spiked out, I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I most definitely from.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of This Week in Startups. It's 2 days before the start of the big NFL season, so I thought I would have one of my old friends and also a very famous media guy on the show. Kelly Perdew is the CEO of RotoHog, and of course he won the second season of The Apprentice. Welcome to the program, Kelly.
Thanks, Jason. It's an honor to be here.
And we knew each other from back in the old internet days.
Absolutely.
You were running, what was the company you were running back in the Digital Coast early days?
E-Teams.
E-Teams, right.
Amateur sports portal.
Amateur sports portal.
Sold it to Active Networks.
Yeah.
Looking for an IPO this year.
And then everything blew up, and I turned on my TV, and boom, lo and behold, you were on The Apprentice.
Yes.
And you won.
Won season 2.
But truth be told, winning The Apprentice, I mean, you're a legit entrepreneur. Of the people on The Apprentice, how many of them are legitimate entrepreneurs, like actually capable of being a CEO in your estimation?
I think Burnett goes into it with kind of picking 4 or 5 potential kind of Class A winners.
Right.
And then does very intelligently. It's a show on television, so it has to be entertaining, hit all the demographics, and do everything else. So I think he strategically
casts
sets it just
the
like
other
that.
8, whatever it is, a dozen people?
There were 18.
18. So basically, 2 out of 3 people who are speaking at any given point in time have no idea what they're doing in business, or are just lame.
Well, you said that. I didn't say that.
I know you didn't say that. But I mean, I am a huge fan of the show.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I think that it sort of jumped the shark after your show. Like, it just started to get, like, too much with the celebrities. Like, I liked when they were actually, in your season, it was very much about business ideas and formulating a business plan and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they definitely kind of went to the, romance and fighting and backstabbing, and then actually went completely into the Celebrity Apprentice.
Right.
Which certainly, I think, has its place, but it's a very different type of competition, and it also attracts a little bit of a different audience.
Right. Omarosa was the season before you, right?
Yes, Omarosa was season 1.
But she came back during your season, I think.
She didn't make it back during my season. I think she's made it back to most of the seasons.
Every single season.
About, yeah. She's done a great job of branding.
So just walk me through why you did the show, how you found out about it, and the impact it had on your life.
Absolutely. Getting on a reality show, there are 4 or 5 different ways. One, you can kind of go to those giant marketing affairs where it goes around the block and you're waiting in line, is trying to get into The Price is Right. I typically don't get picked out of line to go into clubs, so I thought that probably wasn't going to happen.
No. Wow, white guy in khakis and a blue shirt.
It doesn't happen very often. Yeah. You can also mail in, with the other 750,000 people, a tape and paper. And I looked at it, and I was in the military before and had a top secret security clearance, and the background investigation wasn't as long as the 14 pages of filling stuff out for applications. So I was like, I'm not doing that either.
Right.
And then Burnett actually went around to the major business schools and did closed casting calls. So I got an email from the alumni database that said, hey, we're having a closed casting call.
Where'd you go, Pepperdine or UCLA?
Anderson, yeah.
Anderson.
For law and business.
That's UCLA, right? Anderson?
Correct.
Yeah.
And,
so you went for law and business?
Yeah, the JD MBA program.
Yeah.
And went in and...
That's a great program, by the way. Just
the program's fantastic.
And that really helps when you go into business, to have like both an MBA and, the law.
So...
Yes or no?
I would say just from an ROI and the amount of money it costs to go to school now, that you can probably, if you want to be on the business side, you can probably audit 2 or 3 or 4 of the law school classes. And I don't use a lot of constitutional law or civil procedure and the other ones in the business side. So you can get corporations, security regulations, and a few others out.
Interesting. Okay, so you go to one of these private casting calls. How many people are at that? A dozen?
300, 400.
Really?
Yeah, 300 or 400 of us. They put us in a room with a casting agent, 10 of us, all dressed in suits, 10 guys in suits, a female casting agent, and she asked, I'm going to ask you all questions. I've got your little applications right here in front of me. I just want you to answer, talk to each other, talk amongst yourselves, and I want to see how it goes. And she said, you know, first question, you know, what do you think about women in positions of power in business? And the gentleman next to me thought, you know, go the completely politically correct, talk for as long and as loud as possible. I believe you should treat everybody equally no matter what you think. And he was going on for about a minute.
Stump speech.
Slammed the table really loud.
Right.
Said, that is the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard.
Right.
Women will eat their young in positions of power business. They've got chips on their shoulder and something to prove, and half the people got a shocked look on their face.
Right, like, oh my God.
She started cracking up.
Yeah.
Did a couple more of those and pulled me aside and then went through the process. And there was...
So you probably beat out, if they went to 10 business schools, a couple of hundred each, probably beat out tens of thousands of people.
On the business school side, and then theoretically, I mean, Trump always says that there were 1 million applications. But.
Right. So you get on the show, you show up there, and what is it like? Is it like the real world, like we sort of experience it, like everybody's just sleeping in the same place, or is it, you know, it's much shorter, right? Does it take place over 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
No, it's about 8 weeks of filming. It's back to back to back. I mean, a lot of people who are watching just think, I don't know what they think we're doing during the weeks from Thursday to Thursday when it was on. And it's back to back, so it's 2 to 3 days of competition. Pretty limited sleep, you know, common sleeping area, common bathing areas, and everything else, which I'm kind of used to from the military.
Right.
Big advantage, I think, going into it from that standpoint.
I mean, you're actually, there's no stalls. I mean, it's just like, here's a seat. Good luck.
In the military, yes, but on the show, that's not.
On the show, not the case.
Yeah, and you're on 24/7. So the camera's on, you know, audio's on, and they're on you like 24/7, including the shower.
Yeah.
So there is no real time alone for about 8 weeks, and they do back-to-back competition. So if you lose, get stressed out because now there's a boardroom and all the politicking begins, and oh gosh, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get fired. I'm already nervous and I'm not sleeping. If you win, you get this great little reward. You know you're not having to worry about anything with the boardroom, and you've got until the next morning to kind of hang out and chill out and do whatever you want. So very advantageous to win a lot. I think it was like 13 of the 16 wins.
Yeah, you guys won a lot. Yeah. And you won a lot. I mean, that's why you basically wound up winning, because you had so many wins in the challenges. So they basically make it a pressure cooker.
Very much so.
And you can't see your family, you can't talk to your family, you can't have a cell phone there?
Yeah, they take away everything, your driver's license, your money, all contact, you know.
Really?
Everything is controlled. I mean, it is a game show.
Right.
And there are significant, very strict rules around what you're allowed to do and not do in terms of getting help, playing by the rules and everything else. So,
but you have internet access?
You do have internet access, but it's controlled. So it's not like you're just sitting there by yourself doing something. There's a camera on it, people are watching, other team members are around and everything else. So
basically you wind up winning. It's on national television, and I think season 2 of The Apprentice was probably the peak of its ratings.
Yeah, we had 15 to 20 million people a week for 16 weeks, and then the finale was, they changed it. It was a 3-hour finale.
I remember.
Just way too long of a finale.
Right.
And I think they had about 30 million people at some point in time tune in for the finale.
So now when you walk around, like if you go to Vegas and you're in a casino, or you're walking around on the promenade in Santa Monica, I mean, how often do people stop you?
I get the, where do I know you're from? Every day. And then probably 1 in 10 place it. If I'm in a suit and tie in New York, it's a lot easier to place it than if I'm in, you know, flip-flops and shorts. And
so now, in business, and you supposedly work for Trump for a year afterwards, or whatever.
I did. I moved to New York and actually worked in the organization for a year. Got to know Donald and the whole team there.
Donald being?
Donald Trump.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe Donald.
And Don Jr.
Don Jr.
Don Jr. and Ivanka.
Yeah.
It's Donald. Yeah, Donald.
And those guys, actually, the kids seem like they're legitimate business people.
Heads are screwed on straight. They're in there early working, late working. They know what they're doing. I was very impressed.
You actually would think like these kids got to be total screw-ups, but they actually know what they're doing. It's pretty clear from when you see them.
He and his ex-wife did a great job raising them.
So you only spent a year there, and you left afterwards?
Actually, I stretched it to 14 months to get my book published. Take Command, 10 leadership principles I learned in the military and put to work for Donald Trump. And I wanted to use his marketing exposure to launch the book. Did it in his Fifth Avenue, in the foyer of his Fifth Avenue building.
And he seems pretty, like, he curates the people who have been the winners, and he sort of stands by them and keeps them in his cobble.
Incredibly loyal, and you might not get that from watching. But
no, you get it, definitely.
When I told him I wasn't going to continue on in the organization, he said, you know, get me X on the phone. He got them on the phone, and set up an interview for me. Somebody who had said that if he doesn't hire me in the show, they would hire me.
Wow.
And said, hey, I want to talk to Kelly. Set it up for next Thursday. He's coming over. Kelly, you're going? Yes. I mean,
wow. Yeah.
Really, very
Seems like
loyal.
a super loyal guy. So now in business, so this has a huge impact on your career. Obviously, you get a book. You're on the military channel doing a show. What impact does it have on being an entrepreneur?
Well, a couple of different things I think that having that media exposure does. You're not very shy about the media and understand, I think, a lot of the impact that it has. When, say, 5 companies that are in the same sector are attempting to get exposure via media, if all 5 of them call and one of them happens to be run by the guy who won The Apprentice, that becomes an extra additional hook that raises it above the fray so that you can get exposure.
Basically, it's great. Apprentice, and Kelly Perdew, the winner of The Apprentice, basically just like this little extra thing.
Absolutely get press. I also do a couple speaking engagements a month.
Wow.
And try to target those where they're relevant to whatever company I happen to be working with.
And it's probably a little bit of bang. You probably get 5, 10, 15 grand for doing something like that.
Some of them are paid. Some of them are for charitable things. So
I don't mention charity, but I mean, it's a good racket, the speaking gig racket, corporations and stuff like that. You can make scratch.
I did probably 100 speaking gigs in the year after The Apprentice.
Wow.
And had the allure of, do I want to be the speaking guy?
Yeah.
And travel all the time. And I just didn't want to, that's not the life I want. I really love building companies. Much like you do. And, so I decided not to go the speaking route, but still try to hit it every now and then.
And a great company that you can all try is DNA Mail. See what I just did there on the segue?
Yeah, no one saw that.
Nobody saw the segue. DNA Mail, everybody loves DNA Mail. They've been sponsoring This Week in Startup since the beginning. Go to DNA Mail, sign up, get 25% off if you use the hashtag twist. Well, don't put the pound there, just type in TWIST. And if you're running a company, you shouldn't have an IT department doing your servers and mailboxes and putting extra hard drives in. You should outsource that and focus on whatever your core business is. That's what I do here. Go use DNA Mail and go thank them on your Twitter account. Just say, hey, thanks at DNA Mail for sponsoring This Week in Startups and for supporting independent media. I don't want to make it into like a funding drive or anything like that, but it's kind of bold of them to come in from episode 1 and then go all the way to episode 75. It's not cheap to sponsor the show, and they've been doing it from the beginning, and that's why we have good lighting and nice cameras, and we produce the show twice a week. You wouldn't get to hear this interview without the fine folks at DNA Mail, so go ahead and thank them on your Twitter and Facebook account. They actually monitor that stuff. They got one of those social media experts there. And when they see you tweet it, it means a lot. So give them a shot, and it's really cheap at 99 point, a bunch of 9s uptime. They're really a Class A operation. Now that we've got that out of the way, tell us about your current company, RotoHog.
RotoHog.
Yeah.
We're a games as a service provider.
Yeah.
We build games for brands and deliver them across multiple channels. I was brought in 2 years ago.
Okay.
Mission Ventures, DFJ Dragon, Allen and Company.
Wow.
And Sports Capital Partners Worldwide are all investors.
That's significant investors. Now, DFJ.
You seem surprised, Jason.
No, I mean, I'm not surprised that you have good investors, but you just rattled off some of the big ones.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. DFJ
Dragon.
Dragon
the China Fund.
Is the China Fund. So
Correct.
the China Fund's in this. Allen and Company, that's a big deal. I have Allen and Company as an investor as well.
Yes.
Mission Ventures, are they down here in SoCal, Mission?
They are. They're the largest San Diego
fund,
and they also have a satellite office in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
They've been spectacular. They've been there.
I hear amazing things about them from the SoCal entrepreneurs. Really, like
every one of the partners is fantastic. I've worked with all of them.
It really is a key when you're picking a venture firm. It's like there's the firm, and you got to pick the right firm because you don't want people who are D-bags or just not experienced and going to panic. But you also got to get the right partner. I mean,
absolutely. So from an entrepreneur who's out looking at VC funds and has the opportunity to select between them.
Yes.
There are a lot of variables, I think, that are super important. One is the fund and its reputation. 2 is where the fund is in its fund cycle and which one you're getting your money from, because you don't want them running out of money.
So explain that in a little more detail. What does that mean, cycle?
Typically, if it's a $200 million fund, they're going to invest some portion of that, say $120 million, into first-time funds. And the follow-on round, into the first rounds, thank you very much, what they call dry powder.
Dry powder
is available.
Money that's not invested yet.
And has been kind of set aside and earmarked for you, so that when you need more or you're getting ready to grow, they have that available to do that and don't have to worry about it.
Yes. So they have a fund, and if they invest $5 million in your company, they should have another $5 million, another $10 million, some amount of money in dry powder, the industry term for money that is not allocated yet, they should have that ready to go if you hit your milestones and you grow, because they want to keep up their percentage ownership in your company.
Well, there are a bunch of different dynamics.
Yeah.
If they're at the end of their fund, they really want to get into your deal, they don't have the next fund raised yet, and your deal's going to close, they put their money in, maybe they get a board seat, then there's a next round, and they go, oh, no, we don't need to do a next round. Just keep growing it.
Yeah.
Because if there's another round and they don't have the money available, they could get diluted.
Right.
And they might not. So that you have very different objectives as as the founder.
Right. There's a conflict. We're out of money, therefore you shouldn't do another round because our percentage ownership is going to go down. They're going to tell you, hey, build off revenues.
Exactly.
And that might not be in your best interest. You may need more fuel because you have a competitor, man. You got somebody else. So all of a sudden, Mark Pincus decides, hey, we need to have a fantasy sports thing, and he's got a war chest.
From your lips to Mark's ears.
Yeah.
So that's very important where they are in their fund cycle. The other portfolio companies too, because they frequently can do a very good job of introducing you to leverageable entities. Now, with a lot of companies, you don't want to hang out with a whole bunch of other startups. You might. It might be helpful. Depends on the type of product or service you're offering. But in our instance, we like very large distribution channels so that we can take our games and apply them and all the monetization and audience engagement that occur in the game environment with those channels.
So tell me the business of RotoHog. You guys are the destination, or you empower the destinations?
So we power media partners who want to put games on Facebook, on their website, in mobile environments, whatever it is. I also have some games on RotoHog because that's where I test things. For instance, clients like NASCAR don't want us in the middle of the season trying a new monetization method. I need to be able to do that at rotohog.com, so it's kind of our test bed.
Got it. And so I'm looking at your site right here. You can see it as well on the monitors there. NBA Stock Exchange, NBA Ultimate Fantasy, presented by Right Guard, and some other sites here, Pro Football Weekly. So basically, if you have an audience and I want to enable them to have
interaction in a game environment, we can do it several ways. If you're a large company and want it all to yourself, customized completely for you, we'll build that for you.
So that's just like pure white label.
Correct.
RotoHog doesn't come up.
Powered by RotoHog at the very bottom. For instance, we did that for ABC and The Bachelor. We powered The Bachelor game for ABC. We currently power Us Weekly's magazine game. So celebrity fantasy. So instead of 10 points for a Tom Brady touchdown, it's 10 points for Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Get out of rehab.
DUI.
DUI, whatever it might be. Exactly.
And this just must skyrocket engagement. I mean, the only engagement in a blog really is retweeting it or posting a comment.
Absolutely.
Voting it up and down, perhaps, if they have something silly like that.
Our clients typically want three things: grow audience, cause them to do things, whether it's watch videos, support sponsors, whatever it might be, and then monetize. And then we monetize to the end user. In fantasy sports, I don't know if you know this, but you and I can play for $10 each. Winner gets 18.
Where does the 10% go?
RotoHog and client and partner takes the 10, 20%.
Wait, so are people when they play fantasy sports, they're playing for money?
In our games, they are.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there was a betting dynamic in there, and that's legal because
the Internet Illegal Online Gaming Act carved out horse racing and fantasy sports as legal ways to, because ostensibly they're based upon skill. If I can identify or anticipate which quarterback's going to do better next week compared to you, that's a skill. Same as handicapping a horse.
And so there's a lot of money moves through these systems, I take it?
The North America assessment by the Fantasy Sports Trade Association, the FSA, is about $2.5 billion a year.
Wow.
For just North America. So when you get outside of the U.S., it's actually legal to do a lot of sports betting, regular betting. And it's.
I mean, you have things like InTrade and what are the other Betfair?
Betfair.
It's huge. Betfair.
There's
$1 billion in
significant size, and that's part of our business model too, is powering Gambleized fantasy products for those types of entities.
I see. So you can white label for them as well.
We also are powering what I call snackable games for MMOs. You're familiar with a World of Warcraft, for instance?
Yeah.
They have a problem in that a user session's 2 to 4 hours.
Right. It's a big commitment.
Yeah. So we're going to enable everybody to play their MMO at work. 5-minute snippets. Kind of Farmville for MMO.
Interesting. So you basically can just, instead of going on a whole quest, you can just kill something.
Well, we're going to enable you to anticipate and play a miniature game that gives you the rewards that help power your character or avatar inside that larger environment. So it's pretty interesting. We'll launch that game in about 45 days.
How old is the company? And they brought you in as a CEO, correct?
Correct. 2006 it was founded. Wharton professor and a student founded the company as a B2C site focused exclusively on fantasy sports. I came in June of 2008 and switched us to a games as a service, B2B to C model.
Yeah.
And I've been there now for a little over 2 years.
What was your decision-making process? I mean, B2C, B2B, both things obviously work. Why'd you go B2B?
If you look at from the fantasy sports only, just from that sector, you've got a CBS, an ESPN, a Yahoo. You can look at, and they're the leaders in the fantasy sports space in terms of numbers of people that play. I said, okay, you can look at it as they spend zero on acquiring users, or hundreds of millions of dollars a year, if you consider that all the content there is just to drive people to the game.
Right.
In both ways you look at it, it's very difficult to compete.
Right. You're dealing with Yahoo, which
can't spend zero and can't compete with 100 million.
Right.
So they all have different types of issues with their back end and how they've built their technologies, and this is true across that entire $2.2 billion.
Yeah, I mean, this is not their speciality. I mean, this is hard.
CBS bought Sportsline in '95. Haven't put out a new game in 8 years.
Wow.
ESPN, and they'll have problems at different times. It's pretty difficult to build these games.
It's a focus issue too. I mean, this is complicated. There's nuance to it.
Secondary, tertiary business.
Yeah, and they got to keep the lights on. And if you've got a machine over here that's making billions of dollars, if you're ESPN or you're Yahoo, and you've got billions of dollars of revenue in this, and you can look at this little tiny thing that makes $10 million or $50 million or even $100 million, it's not moving the needle.
Correct.
They don't feel it's material, because all money is material on some level, but it's not material in terms of focus.
So my thought process was, well, yes, we could go compete on a B2C play. Where's the out there? On a B2B play, all of these entities are, in the next 24 to 36 months are going to have to make a buy or build decision on what they're going to do to upgrade. And I would like to be the enterprise solution, enterprise strength.
How has that gone?
It's gone well. We've powered NBA, NASCAR, Sporting News, ABC's The Bachelor. Again,
so real brands, but you haven't gotten the Yahoo or the ESPN to switch yet.
And the idea would be to have them take on 1 or 2 games as trials, make sure it works, make sure we can handle scale so they get that comfort level.
Right.
And then Fox Sports has used us too for a few different things, so that's pretty sizable. They're number 4.
How big is the company now? It's LA-based,
35 people. Got 25 people here and 10 in a wholly owned subsidiary in Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur. Are those the developers, or are you doing
QA and some development?
What about international development? I mean, if this works here in the U.S., wouldn't you bring it to, I don't know, Europe or Asia?
Yeah. So we've set the platform up so that we can deliver it in any language, including Mandarin, even though the character set size is different. We've delivered soccer games in Portuguese and Brazil. For Fox Sports, we've powered their international baseball game in Spanish, and actually had it inside of broadcasts, mobile, and the website.
And so how does it become a billion-dollar business? I mean, is the B2B, will that scale that big? It wouldn't seem to be that big of a business. It maybe becomes $100 million, maybe $50 million, $100 million. How do you get it to become multi-billion-dollar business?
Yeah, so the idea behind the B2B was also to approach different sectors. So we've got a very configurable, highly scalable gaming platform.
Yep.
Sports, we already do well, and we know it. Everybody knows about us in the space. We've started in entertainment with ABC's The Bachelor, Us Weekly magazine. We've got a lot more in the pipeline.
Which seems really innovative, which means one of two things. It's too innovative, so people are not going to embrace it, or it could be just a huge success. Which is it so far?
So far, it's been a big success. The engagement level has gone up significantly. The monetization issue, other than advertising and sponsorship, is the interesting part there, because you can't wager on whether or not Lindsay's going to get another.
That seems to be a game of skill. I mean, if there was ever a game of skill,
lots of people would argue
picking who's going to have the next DUI in Hollywood is, to me, that's skill.
So the third one I think you'll find interesting is kind of the brands and consumer packaged goods. So gaming and gaming dynamics and all the components around that, we're experts in that. So we can provide Nestle audience engagement tools, is what I actually call them. They happen to be games because from the fantasy sports element. Fourth sector is the MMO space.
Right.
Hundreds of millions of dollars available in that space, solving some problems for the largest MMOs in the world. And then the last one is probably bigger than all 4 of those combined. That's the regulated gaming space. So if we're providing products for both sportsbooks and entities outside the U.S. that want gambleized fantasy products, it starts to become very, very significant.
What's going to happen with the sort of gaming stuff in the United States? I mean, we saw the poker. I'm big in poker. Obviously, millions of Americans are playing poker. I'm a full tilt pro, actually, and a big fan of it. Are we
.net, right?
Yes, I play on full tilt. No, I'm just a red pro. I mean, they sponsor me in tournaments and everything. what's going to happen with this? I mean, we're just going to give away this entire business to other entities outside the United States, or we're going to come to our senses and actually allow Americans to profit and benefit and have jobs from this?
Well,
not that I am stacking
I appreciate
the question.
your position.
Yeah.
I think there's no question that it'll get state by state. See, the issue is it won't become U.S.-wide, the ability to play poker across state lines. It will start to be okayed state by state as the states, the ones that need the most money,
right,
start adopting legislation that allows them to play in state.
The mother of invention.
Exactly. And in fact, the correlations between and people who are going after that market, there's a lot of money going after that market as they think it's going to open up.
Yep.
One of the highest correlations between people who play poker and other things is horse racing is one.
Right.
It's not 1-to-1, but it's pretty good.
Yep.
Fantasy sports, people who put money down in fantasy sports environments are highly, highly likely to be people who play poker for money.
So basically you become a very valuable chip in the space for somebody who was in the poker business because you have a big, large database of people who use this stuff.
And millions of people with credit cards who are already engaged in that similar type of behavior.
You think this is where like the Zyngas of the world are going to wind up going? You think they'll go into actual cash transactions?
Well, I mean, Zynga's #1 game that is never really talked about is the poker game.
Right.
In that environment. I believe Playdom, just acquired by Disney, just announced a deal with Harrah's. Same type of focus. So 100% everybody's looking at this because it's a huge revenue stream.
And best case scenario, this happens in 2 years. Worst case scenario, 7. What do you think?
Within 12 months, you'll start seeing states saying it's legal to play poker online intra-state, meaning you can only play with somebody in California. So there's some dynamics around being able to provide that safely where it's shown and everything else.
Yeah, we'll get your IP address, and it's up to the user to not lie. And you know,
there'll be a few license holders in each state that'll go for a whole lot of money. And there are a lot of people competing for those.
What do you think they'll be? What do you think it would be in California?
How much would a license be?
Yeah, $250?
Staggering. I mean, and there would be so many things associated with it.
Hundreds of millions of dollars for a license?
Absolutely.
Billions?
Probably $1 billion.
Wow.
That's my guess. 3 of them. That's
3
just
licenses, $1 billion
That's
each.
my guess.
Basically, California can, I don't know, have textbooks in classrooms or...
Well, if you think about the entities that are going after them, one, obviously the existing regulated gaming entities are very anxious to want to be able to have a part of that, i.e. Harrah's and those types of entities. Other types of regulated entities that are already doing things with the state, lotteries. Right, they're an interesting play as well. And then you've got all the entities outside of the U.S. who already have the expertise in running tens of millions of people through their system.
Full
can do it. You name
Poker
it. Right.
Stars.
The Betfairs, the Casino Tropez. There are a few really big ones.
Wow, it's going to change pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difficult part is everybody wants to look at it and say, I want everybody in the United States, right? Not just everybody in Vermont or Virginia, or and hopefully it unfolds that way because you have to acquire the users inside each of those states, and that's where I'm hoping we're going to be able to provide a lot of value. You
need to start local fantasy football leagues and fantasy NBA leagues in each city or state.
Well, playing for
that's what I would do.
Playing for cash, I've got everybody's credit card and zip code and everything else inside those dynamics, so we know size of audience in each of the states. So we'll have it primed, and as soon as it's ready, it's getting ready to turn over.
Genius.
I'll hopefully make friends with the license owner.
What do you think the most important characteristics of a good entrepreneur are for your money? The
most important characteristics. Well, integrity's got to be one, and that comes. There are a lot of ways to describe what that means, but for the employees, the partners, the investors, it's like basically doing what you say you're going to do. You have that integrity. It's awesome. Passion.
Yep.
There are giant brick walls that you're going to have to go around,
run your head into,
through over and over.
Slam your head into.
No one else is willing to do it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to lead the charge.
Basically, feels like I'm doing that some days here.
Absolutely.
Banging my head against a brick wall.
Yeah, and the passion tied with the perseverance, right? Not giving up.
Right.
Because
resiliency.
So many times, I've got a smiley face, sad face with a spinner on it, and every time the phone rings, it could be either one. Right? It's like, oh, fantastic, the best partnership ever. Oh, that client wants to go do something else.
Yeah, we're going to be crushed. We're going to crush everybody. Yeah. It basically is the nature of entrepreneurship. What did you learn in the military about entrepreneurship? I mean, people will talk about, oh my God, military experience is so great. Is it, in your estimation?
I think it's fantastic. In fact, I attribute, that's what I wrote the book about. I got asked the question off camera on The Apprentice every single time I was pulled away is, hey, how do you think your military experience helped you on this task? And I think that there is a misconception most of America thinks due primarily to probably Hollywood.
Yeah.
That there's a very lockstep, closed-minded approach that military people have when they come into situations. And in fact, the opposite is true. I think that some of the best problem solvers with the resources at hand of any kind of grouping of people that I've met before. Two other things that are pretty dynamic. Being a good leader in terms of which you have to be as an entrepreneur also means being a good follower in a lot of instances. And there are a lot of situations where you need to understand how to be able to get along and not be, I know this might not sound good to you, but be the expert, the loudest, the most, we're going to do exactly, what I say leading forth and going forward.
Right.
But the following component comes into play a lot too. You
Absolutely.
build a really strong team.
I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to get my task done to the best of my ability.
Bingo.
Because we're a unit. And if I don't do my part, it's going to screw up the whole system.
Yeah, and that's the other one is the duty concept. And this is kind of the Cal Ripken thing. If you show up for work and do what you're supposed to do every day, you'd be surprised that, you're better than like 95% of the population.
Showing up is a big part of it.
Show up and do what you're supposed to do day in, day out, and a lot of stuff gets done.
Let's talk about the military for a second.
Sure.
You're comfortable talking about that and the situation and the wars and everything like that?
I am. A lot of my friends and classmates are still in active duty in Afghanistan and coming back from Iraq. And
what's your take on sort of where we're at with Afghanistan and sort of is there a way to win this? Should we be out of it? What is your personal feeling?
Yeah, I don't think there's the time to go into all the pros and cons and the benefits. Yes, there's absolutely a way to win it.
Right.
The question is always whether or not the military is just a tool of foreign policy.
Right.
It doesn't decide. For the most part, it doesn't just go to decide to do a whole bunch of stuff on its own.
Right.
Like one of the only countries in the world that the military has never overthrown the civilian government.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Period.
Right.
It's a pretty neat thing.
Yeah.
I do believe that given the proper resources, the military can win just about anything.
Right.
And I'm not talking about brute force only.
Right,
I'm talking about psychologically
hearts and minds
to win, to execute whatever the win is described. If the win is described and doesn't change, or changes with the gradual and understanding that that's communicated effectively to the military leadership, we'll solve the problem.
How much has it changed, in the military since you were there in terms of what the tactics are and engagement?
It's dramatically different. I learned things as a military intelligence officer and airborne ranger about, a lot of Soviet weapons and equipment as I was coming up through stuff, right? And these, what they had described at the time as low intensity conflicts. It's probably not the right, there are a lot of oxymorons with stuff, right?
What is a low intensity
low
engagement?
Intensity. But where you are really in these places like Afghanistan where you're operating where it's not easy to distinguish, civilian from, enemy in those types of environments. And it's long, protracted, includes things like building entire sets of infrastructure for cities. That's not something that the Army had ever been trained in or prepared to do. And they've become trained and prepared to do those kinds of things now. So there's significant differences from when I was in.
And technically, it's changed a lot too. The technology is
awesome. It's
unbelievable what we're capable of doing now.
Yeah, the knowledge about what's occurring on the battlefield isn't reliant upon a soldier up front radioing back to his unit, back to his unit, back to his unit, back to headquarters.
Yeah.
It's still very, very important to have the eyes on, but the amount of remote sensing, the amount of analytics that occur, the horsepower that we've got around the technology around the battlefield, not only in collecting information but also in delivering, significant, weapons downrange. It's become very accurate and very sophisticated.
It seems like we're going to be just having a drone army canvassing certain areas, and we're going to be able to...
Clone Wars?
It feels almost, in some ways, it just feels like, people talked about Star Wars and having this sort of blanket over the entire world. It seems like it's going to occur at 20,000 feet or 30,000 feet. I don't know where drones live, but they're just going to overlay an entire area, and we're going to know what's going on there and strategically come in and take out things that should not be occurring.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to sneak around and do stuff anymore. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. One of the things that we're recovering from is not having the real human intelligence on the ground that's able to analyze, right? Because that was for a number of different reasons in prior administrations, radically reduced
Yeah.
to the point where people were brought back from CIA and other agencies.
Right.
And when you don't have that intelligence there in person, you rely only on those electronic components.
Yeah.
And there
You're
are
not
ways
going to do
around-
well.
And there are ways around that. And that's why you can get surprised by a whole lot of different things if you don't really understand what's going on the ground.
You do have to understand what is motivating these people, which is something the military didn't really have to understand previously,
I mean,
or as much. I mean,
you should have.
Right.
I mean, because the weapons of the weapons were so strong and of such brute strength that you may not have had to. You just said,
Yeah.
I don't care what you think or why.
yeah, we're just going to push you above this line.
Right. So we've
And-
attempted to not be that way as much, and in order to win, you don't necessarily want to take over an entire country and run it.
Yeah.
That's not winning.
Not anymore, yeah. Although it does seem to have worked in Japan. I don't know if it's analogous to what's going on in the Middle East. Perhaps if we had dropped a nuke on Afghanistan after 9/11, we could have.
Where do you drop it?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be
That's
it'd be a tactical nuke for strictly purposes. And I know that it was probably discussed. Or they say pretty clearly it was discussed. It would have been for negotiating, sort of with the entire world, of our stance on attacking this country.
Yeah, I mean, we supported Afghanistan in its war with the Soviet Union for a long period of time and taught them a lot of these tactics that are very effective, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting. Who are your entrepreneurial heroes? Who do you look up to and say that's the guy I want to be, or that's the person I take notes from?
There's a guy named.
Aside from Donald Trump.
Of course,
Yes.
that goes without saying. It is pretty spectacular to look at what he's done as a real estate person in New York City.
Yeah.
To become a worldwide brand that's most closely associated with the word success.
He
That's the
has
focus
a
group.
marketing deftness that is underappreciated, clearly.
It's unbelievable. If you look at all the the public fights he gets in, whether it's with Rosie or whoever it might be,
Very strategic.
they'll occur about 2 or 3 weeks right before the next episode of The Apprentice kicks
Yes.
on. It's fun to watch him operate with the media. There's a guy named Steve Wynn. Not the Steve Wynn from Las Vegas.
No. Okay.
The Steve Wynn from Portland, Oregon, who ran Adidas and grew it back against Nike in the late 90s. Became a mentor to me. Spectacular individual, very smart, high integrity, and has helped a lot. He helped us affect the sale of E-Teams to Active Networks. Got to know him then, he's remained a mentor. And then somebody that I wanted to mention who's impacted innumerable entrepreneurs in Southern California, who founded the Tech Coast Angels, Louis Villalobos, was a very good friend of mine. He actually passed away last October. But he was a spectacular individual and taught me a lot about how to run startup companies.
Yeah. And so angel investing, something you do? Or?
Yes. My wife and I actually have placed some what we think are well thought out bets in the last few months, and we continue to do investing on a go-forward basis.
And how do you, what do you look for? What's your angel investing thesis?
Market sizing, passion, and perseverance of the entrepreneur.
Right.
And something that I have some familiarity with, I or my wife have from our own technical or historical expertise.
So working backwards, domain expertise, something
Yes.
where you can add value as an investor.
Absolutely.
Passionate team, which we talked about before. If you don't have that, you're not going to be very resilient when you have to bang your head into a brick wall over and over again.
Yes.
And a market. Describe the market.
So from a market sizing standpoint, I look at not only the delivery of the products and services, but a market for that company to get out, right? Because typically the investment and investors, at least my view of looking at it, is you want a return on that investment, right? You want your money working for you. So there needs to be a way for that to be extracted, right? So the size of the market, whether the wind's at the back of whatever's going with that, they're not fighting an uphill battle.
You don't want to be selling fax machines.
And if there's only one company that could possibly ever want to acquire you, that's bad for value.
Right.
You want 10 companies who want to acquire
Yeah,
you.
it needs to be a dynamic market, multiple acquisitions. I mean, your company must be in the crosshairs. I mean, how do you know when to sell? Because I'm assuming in a market this hot, where Google is buying everything in sight in social gaming, Facebook is very active, Yahoo, ESPN, Disney, all these people want to be in this space, and you are a great bargaining chip. Why haven't you sold so far? What's your philosophy of sort of M&A? When are you going? How do you time it? And take me through your thinking on that. Are you Are you always open to that? Are you strategic about it? Do you run a process? I mean, you got Allen Company as an investor, so you have some pretty good people advising you, I'm assuming.
Yes. So I think that you could never say no to an offer you haven't received yet.
It seems logical.
So in terms of M&A activity, I believe, and this is what we did with E-Teams, that you always want to attempt to have it occur on your terms, and you want to create some form of an auction.
Got it.
In order to extract.
So your
the most
term
value.
being an auction.
Could, potentially, right?
Right.
There could be a specific reason why you know this one entity is going to provide significant. They're going to value you much higher because you could be leverageable across all their assets. You're already delivering them value. If you left, it would be very bad for them.
Got it.
There are a lot of different things that you look at, I think, when you're in that type of environment. In terms of when you make the decision, you know, I was not the founder, and the investors own a significant chunk of the company. So it will be a collective decision on when something like that occurs. I was kind of the turnaround, you know, the hired gun.
Oh, for RotoHog.
For RotoHog.
Yeah. But what about the last company? How did you go through that process? Was it just because was it distressed, or was it on the upswing?
It was on the upswing, but the bubble burst. So we sold it after the bubble burst with no revenue. We'd focused exclusively on product and growth of users.
Right.
And we had probably 250,000 people that were doing their schedule standing roster, who's cooking mom next week, inside of this environment for amateur sports.
Right.
You know, little leagues, AYSOs. And Active Networks had focused almost exclusively on the back end registration tools for triathlons, marathons, what have you. When we sold it to them, there were 75,000 girls softball tournaments scheduled for the upcoming summer. And if you think about tying a registration engine, where you're taking a piece of every transaction and managing that whole thing for 75,000 tournaments for the upcoming summer, just for the sport of softball for girls.
Right.
You start to see a pretty neat mixture of that together. I also didn't.
So that's sort of your job, though, as the acquiree, to start thinking about how they can leverage your asset.
That's how you make the pitch.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's why you get to add a zero.
Right.
That's why we don't just do sports.
Right.
So if I look at a Disney who has an ESPN and needs a back end redone, I say, oh, and by the way, we're also powering ABC's The Bachelor.
Right.
We're also delivering games inside the Facebook environment. We're also.
So you're not trying, because they can look at it and make any one argument that, oh, well, this solves our fantasy sports issue over on ESPN.
Boom, it's a box.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, well, wait a second. Let's open the box up.
Yeah.
And make it bigger because we're already delivering. So there's additional revenue and use for.
And we could do X, Y, and Z in addition to A, B, and C that we're already doing for you. So let's start thinking about the promise of the acquisition as opposed to the maybe performance of the existing relationship.
And this is going to happen. And would you rather it happen to you, or would you like CBS to do it?
Right, and that's the competitive part. So you've got the practical, the promise, and the sort of competition for your assets.
Exactly.
Allen and Company as an investor, how's that been?
But they've been great in terms of advising, setting up, discussions, relationships. Good, they've been fantastic as a.
You go to the big CEO retreat?
I did not go.
You got to go to the Arizona one.
Were you there?
I don't go to the big one. I go to the. Well, actually, we're not supposed to talk about that.
Okay.
It's not supposed to exist.
I said I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what I said. I have no idea what you're talking about. Biggest challenge in business right now. Biggest problem you have.
Biggest challenge in the business right now.
Most frustrating thing. Biggest problem.
Distribution. Probably distribution.
Huh.
For the same reason that an ABC doesn't build it and do it themselves.
Right.
Like, once you get the deal done, getting it marketed correctly inside the those large organizations, they're the good and the bad with most of these deals, right?
Right.
Negotiating the large organization to get the big bang for delivery of what's going on.
Yeah. 'Cause they move slow.
And Ruby developers.
Ruby developers.
Hard to find.
Hard to find, but I've come to the conclusion now. It's just finding a developer that you need is not worth it. I make developers. So I just tell anybody who is got any raw talent, just email Jason at Mahalo, and I will put you in touch with our guys, and we will teach you Cassandra and Django and whatever you need to learn.
We find good PHP guys and convert them to Ruby. That's what we've been.
PHP guys are, and so you're hiring a bunch of those, and if people want that job, they just email Kelly at RotoHog.
There's lots of ways to reach me, but yes, Perdew at RotoHog.
Perdew at RotoHog.
KellyPerdew.com is my blog.
Kelly Perdew is your blog. Your
LinkedIn,
Twitter is
Twitter. Perdew.
Perdew. Everybody knows how to spell that. Perdew. Thanks for coming on the program.
Absolutely.
Really great discussion, and you're very natural on the television. You don't get nervous.
I don't know what causes that.
You know how to answer the questions concisely. It must be your military background.
I watched Donald operate in front of a camera, but I do think that the military background is a significant portion of why I operate the way I do. right?
Interesting.
It's, you know, if you've got a general yelling at you in a tactical environment, it doesn't compare to Donald Trump in a boardroom or even Jason Calacanis this week in startups.
I'm not berating you. I mean, I am. Yeah, I'm sort of throwing a lot of questions at you, making you think, but you got to think. But you give a very concise answer that you think for a second. This is one of the problems people have with media. They don't actually listen to the question the person asks, and they don't think for a second. There's nothing that says you can't stop for 3 seconds and say, my answer now is this. But nobody does that. Did you go to media training, or are you just...
No media training.
I mean, yeah, it must be just being on a show like that, you just...
Well, it helps some. I mean, again, you know, as a military intelligence officer, one of your primary duties is briefing. So briefing 1,600 people to, you know, the general and the S1 and the S2 and the S3. You know, growing up doing that and honing it on the apprentice.
A ranger, that's impressive. Rangers, and where do the Green Berets are above Rangers? Rangers is like...
Ranger qualified means that you've passed through all the Ranger training and you have a Ranger tab.
Right.
Green Berets is a specific unit, Special Forces unit.
That's Special Forces.
Yeah. And
so if you had stayed in that, is that where you would have went next? How many years were you in?
Three years active duty after West Point.
What would you have done after that?
My next duty station was probably outside of the U.S. as probably a company commander.
No Special Forces?
I don't know where I would have ended up. I don't know where I would have ended up. Most military intelligence officers don't go to Ranger School and Airborne School.
You would have went to CIA probably.
They do recruit heavily out of the military for CIA, and
I could see you being a CIA guy.
Yeah.
You'd have to grow a beard and get like a little disheveled if you're going to work in the Middle East.
Learn a couple languages.
Learn a couple languages, man. It's so brave what these people do. I mean, just going. You think about what we do every day, like, the website's down, we freak out, you know, or God, I lost my developer to some competitor, and then it's like these people are like going down the road and like things are blowing up under the dirt, under the tire tracks, and they're just like snipers everywhere. I was watching Black Hawk Down the other night. I mean, it's such a powerful movie. Is it realistic?
Absolutely. 3 of my 4 younger brothers have served active duty. The youngest one did a year in Iraq as a scout platoon leader.
Oof.
100 missions, 30 firefights, brought his whole platoon back, but it's... You know,
I'm assuming scout means you go out first.
Yeah, you go into the town and say, please tell me where the bad guys are.
Right. Yeah, that's going to go well.
And it's they're not liked.
What did you think of, what's the movie that about the guys who...
Defuse all the bombs?
Yeah. You know the movie. You had to have seen it.
I absolutely know the movie and saw it. I thought it was spectacular.
Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker.
Very realistic.
I was not ever in active combat, but from what my youngest brother and a lot of my friends who have been in, you know, active combat has said. I mean, obviously it was dramatized, but
sure.
But yeah,
what do you think about that sort of coming back? I always the scene where he goes and tries to buy cereal is just very powerful, and he's like moving the row of cereal, like what is life all about? That I've got to pick between 100 things of cereal, and I was just, you know, in the middle of the deep, you know, dark heart of darkness, and like my life was on the line. Like, how do you get normal after that?
I think it's something that everybody who's watching this, that's a civilian that may know somebody or some family member of a military person, should actually really think about that long and hard and consider that, because there is a very long and kind of winding process for trying to find your way back to where there's not massive cortical stimulation arousal, where okay, there's a glass of water, I'm talking to Jason. In the grand scheme of things, does that mean anything compared to my guys who are still back there being shot at? The people that were my family for, you know, that we saved each other's lives for the last 6 months, 12 months, whatever.
Yeah, it's just an intensity drop down that is just hugely significant.
It's pretty hard to deal with, so there are a lot of people struggling with that.
I just wish this country did a better job with those folks. It just seems like we get like a, you know, we're so effective as a country in terms of our military, and then we just don't do a good enough job when they get back.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done to help them.
Crazy.
It's one of the things I do. One of the best things actually that came out of the apprentice stuff was actually being able to contribute to charities and have a bigger spread of voice to be able to do stuff. So I help a couple, the USO, which helps them. That's the immediate piece, and there's a lot of help there. You know, when somebody's in the hospital after lost a leg or an arm or whatever it is, it's that, okay, 6 months after you get out, don't have a job, your fiance or your wife left you.
Right.
You know, there's this huge cost that your family bore because one of your parents that worked now had to stop to come take care of you at the hospital.
Right.
the VA is 50 miles away, and by the way, they don't give that good of a service. I mean, there's just a lot of issues around that stuff. And then all the stuff you're talking about.
And then the psychological stuff, like what is my life about now? It's huge.
Exactly.
You may have a chip on your shoulder, you may be depressed, you could be angry, I mean, it could be all of those things at different points during the day. And who can relate to you? I mean, the subset of people who can understand a person, it's like being a CEO of a company in a different way. I mean, you and I can have a beer and just talk about all the crazy stuff that happens, invent.
Right.
But if you were in Iraq, defusing bombs, or just, a scout like your brother, I mean, how do you relate to another human being who's just can't even understand that?
Yep. Got trained on it again, and you got to deal with it. I mean, there's some psychological issues there, and there are a lot of entities that are trying to do it.
Yeah.
It needs a lot more effort.
Awesome to have you on the program. What a great interview, and I'm really happy that you were willing to go to those other places in the interview. Some people are like, let's just talk about my company. I mean, we talked about your company for like 20% of the interview, and the other 80% was wildly interesting. But if you're interested in fantasy sports in any way, go to Rotohog, ROTOHOG, and if you want a job, Perdew, he said it before, get in there. And
if you want to play against me specifically,
yes,
you can go to kellyperdew.com, and we've got the syndicated game module. You just click on it, and you will be on the same leaderboard. You can see how you're doing against me.
Absolutely. And if people beat you, you give them an iPad.
We'll find out. The rules are explicitly stated.
You do have to get all that legal stuff correct.
You can win money.
Boy, do we have some great guests coming up. Steve Huffman of Reddit and Hipmunk, and he's the new, which is a new Y Combinator site. Tony Hell of Chartbeat, which some people may have heard I invested in, is an incredible company. Alex from Get Glue, you've probably heard about those guys. Check into your favorite movie and all that kind of stuff. And of course, on September 21st, we are going to have the next global startup meetup. It's going to start at 8 p.m. Pacific time. The reason we're doing 8 p.m.? We would like to have the folks in Asia, Korea, Japan, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore. This is your meetup. Get your friends together. All you need is to have like an internet connection and Ustream or Skype. You can Skype into the program, boy, it's incredible. Also coming up, Adam Curry is going to be on the program, and so are the folks from Diasporia. Diasporia. The Facebook competitor that raised like $200,000 on Kickstarter.
I don't know the correct.
It's a pretty good guest list. I mean, it's not Kelly Perdew. It's nobody of the television genre, but good people. We'll see you next time on This Week in Startups.
Spiked out, I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I most definitely from.